To understand the world of Rhoda Broughton's Dr. Cupid, you have to imagine a world of very high walls and very thick curtains. It is a world of grand estates, like the one the characters call the big house, where every movement is choreographed by social rules and every conversation is a performance. But the thing about a performance is that it requires a lot of energy to maintain, and eventually the mask always slips. The story centers on the Lambton sisters. There is Margaret, or Peggy, the eldest. She is the one who sees through everything. She's observant, a bit cynical, and she carries a certain weight of responsibility to protect her younger sisters. And there is Prue, who is the sensitive, fragile one. Prue is the kind of person who feels the world too deeply, making her both beautiful and vulnerable. And there is the third sister, energetic and lively, who rounds out this trio of women living in the shadow of their family's social standing. The social landscape they inhabit is dominated by Lady Betty Harborough. Betty is elegant, she is provocative, and she is perhaps the most scandalous woman in their circle. She is involved in a long-standing, complicated affair with a man named John Talbot. Talbot is a man who seems to be searching for an escape from the heavy iron chains of his own life. He's caught in a web of social obligation and passion, and he's trying to navigate a path that doesn't involve total ruin. The novel opens with a sense of this underlying tension. At a dinner party at Lady Ruppel's, the polished surface of high society is cracked when Talbot arrives unexpectedly with a woman and a child. It's a moment of disruption that signals the theme of the whole book, the collision between the public persona and the private reality. As the story moves forward, the romantic threads begin to tangle. John Talbot finds himself drawn to Margaret, the cynical eldest Lambton sister. Their connection isn't built on grand, sweeping gestures, but on quiet, honest moments. They find common ground in simple things, like working in a garden. There is a sense of peace in their connection that Talbot lacks in his life with Lady Betty. But Talbot is tethered. He is bound to Betty by a sense of duty and the complex social rules that govern their lives. Their relationship is a mix of intense passion and a certain kind of boredom, a feeling of a slow, downward passage. When Betty realizes that Talbot has been visiting Margaret, the tension breaks into open conflict. There is a rift of mutual contempt between the lovers. Meanwhile, the younger sister, Prue, is finding her own way into this complicated world. She becomes infatuated with Freddie Duquesne, a man who is charming and delightful, but ultimately superficial. Freddie is what you might call unseaworthy. He's a man who wants to enjoy the play of life without ever being anchored by anything serious. Under the influence of this circle, and perhaps inspired by the scandalous reputation of Lady Betty, Prue begins to mimic Betty's mannerisms. She starts to act in ways that are more daring and less reserved, which causes a deep rift between her and Margaret. Peggy sees the corruption in the Harborough circle and tries to protect Prue, but the damage is already being done. The narrative shifts from social manoeuvring into something much darker when Lady Betty's son, Frankie, falls critically ill. This is the turning point where the novel moves from a drama of manners into a tragedy of profound weight. Betty, seeing her son suffering, begins to view it as a form of divine retribution for her affair with Talbot. In an act of desperate, perhaps misguided, piety, she offers to end her relationship with Talbot to appease God. Talbot is caught in an impossible position. He wants the honest, quiet love he has found with Margaret, but he feels the crushing weight of his obligations. Ultimately, he agrees to leave Betty. This decision doesn't bring the peace or the redemption he hoped for. Instead, it leads to a series of devastating misunderstandings and emotional fractures that leave everyone involved wounded. As the romantic drama reaches its peak, Prue's own life begins to unravel. Freddie Duquesne, the man she thought she loved, decides that his own social horizons are too wide to be tied down by her. He chooses to travel the world, effectively abandoning her in her time of need. This rejection, combined with the emotional strain of everything happening around her, causes Prue's fragile health to break. She falls into a wasting illness, a slow and painful decline. The ending of the novel is somber and elegiac. The seasons change, but there is no sense of renewal, only the reality of loss. Frankie Harborough dies, and with his death, the social dominance that Lady Betty once wielded is replaced by a hollow, profound grief. She is left a broken woman, stripped of the glamour that once defined her. Prue, after a long and agonizing struggle, passes away peacefully in her sleep. In her final moments, she is dreaming of a springtime garden, a stark contrast to the reality of her suffering. This leaves Margaret alone. The story concludes with Margaret in a state of profound existential isolation. She is left to grapple with the cruelty of loss and the memory of those who are gone, while the social world around her continues its indifferent, repetitive cycle, completely unchanged by the tragedies that have occurred within the walls of the big house. When we look back at the structure of the story, it's striking how Broughton moves us from what she calls the whirl of tiny excitements, the gossip, the dinner parties, the social games, into what is an inky gloom of existential grief. The book starts as a social comedy of errors and ends as a tragedy of the human condition. There is a recurring theme here about the concept of firstness. This is the idea that a first love holds a psychological primacy that can haunt every relationship that follows. We see this in the way Talbot's past and his sense of duty haunt his potential for a new life with Margaret, and we see it in the way Prue's early, misplaced infatuations shape her eventual decline. It's the idea that our earliest emotional imprints create a blueprint that is incredibly difficult to rewrite. We also see the metaphor of the chain. At the start of the novel, engagement and social connection might feel like something beautiful, something floral and light. But as the characters move through their experiences, those connections turn into an iron chain. They become heavy, restrictive, and ultimately, they are what pull the characters down. The social obligations that were once just rules to be navigated become the weights that prevent them from finding true happiness. The setting of the garden is perhaps the most important symbol in the book. Throughout the story, the garden is a place of sanctuary and labor. It's where Margaret and Talbot find a moment of genuine connection away from the performative nature of the drawing rooms. But as the novel progresses, the garden also becomes a site of decay. It reflects the shifting state of the characters' lives, from the blooming, hopeful energy of youth to the inevitable, quiet reality of death and the passing of time. Ultimately, Dr. Cupid is a study of the mask. It's about the tension between the person we present to the world, the social mask of the elegant Lady Betty or the charming Freddie Duquesne, and the private truth of who we are when the lights go out. Broughton suggests that while we may spend our lives perfecting our performances and navigating the complex rules of our social circles, we are ultimately vulnerable to the very real, unmaskable forces of illness, grief, and the quiet, lonely endurance of being human.